Welcome to a time of celebration and of thanking God for the life of Edwin, Daniel, Aluzas. We are thrilled to have you here to mourn and to remember and to laugh and to cry together and support this wonderful family. So welcome. The family has chosen this poem for you to start this celebration with. I'm going to wait just a minute because there's so many people coming in right now. He was much beloved. Gloria, people are just pouring in the back. And we hope that you will all stay for lunch afterwards. The guest book and memorabilia will be in the fellowship hall, as will be the family. So hear this poem from Chelan or Chelan, Harkin. Chelan. It's when the earth shakes and foundations crumble that our light is called to rise up. It's when everything falls away and shakes us to the core and awakens all of our hidden ghosts that we dig deeper to find once inaccessible strength. It's in times when division is fierce that we must reach for each other and hold each other much, much tighter. Do not fall away now. This is the time to rise. Your light is being summoned. Your integrity is being tested, that it may stand more tall. When everything collapses, we must find within us that which is indomitable. Rise and find the strength in your heart. Rise and find the strength in each other. Burn through your devastation. Make it your fuel. Bring forth your light. Now is not the time to be afraid of the dark. If you are able, you're welcome to stand as we sing a favorite hymn of Ed's, Once to Every Man and Nation. You may be seated. And Chuck Kerchner is invited forward for a word. That will be followed by special music by John.
Thank you all. It's an honor to be here. Ed Aluzas was wise beyond his years, and that may be an odd thing to say about somebody who left us at age 91. But in wisdom terms, Ed was 5,000 years old. He lived an intelligence about humanity that transcends the usual boundaries, which meant sometimes he had tension with the established church, but we'll talk about that later. He was an extraordinary person who did extraordinary things. And I want to pause on that point before moving forward. Our society recognizes celebrities and billionaires and people with powerful positions, but our democracy, our society depends on ordinary people like us and like Ed doing extraordinary things. So start in Chicago. Ed and I were both born in Chicago. He was a North Side kid, the child of immigrants from Poland and Lithuania. I was a South Side kid, the child of parents who had fled the small towns in southern Illinois to the big city. Ed was a heart and hands guy. He went to Lane Tech on the streetcar. It was a 4,000 student high school then, all boys, and they were designed to produce workers for the city's growing industries. It's now a co-ed school, highly selective, one of the most selective in the States, but Ed wasn't headed to college. But somebody intervened, an early mentor, a Methodist minister, and he saw Ed's restless intellect and maybe a budding vocation. So after a chilly year in North Dakota, Ed moved to Mount Union College in Alliance, Ohio, where he distinguished himself by playing football and baseball and by falling in love with Gloria Chase. He played well enough to be scouted by the Pittsburgh Pirates, but he chose Gloria in seminary instead. So, Boston University, and followed by a wonderful teaching fellowship in Europe and a spring traveling around in a red VW Beetle. This pathway was followed by Leanne and myself in a similar car some years later. Gloria reported that their budget for the entire spring was $800, many youth hostels. Then, 3 congregations in Ohio. In Hudson, Ed led a fledgling congregation to become a thriving community with a handsome sanctuary, and he could have stayed there. But he was seeking another way to express his spiritual energy. So he and Gloria and a growing family headed to doctoral study at the Claremont School of Theology. Starting life anew was more new than they had planned on, because the first night on the road, they were burglarized and lost almost all of their family possessions that were stolen from the U-Haul that they were bringing west. Ed became the associate pastor here at Claremont Presbyterian, and it's where many of you met him. And then, doctoral degree in hand, he started to practice professionally his vocation to be a wise counselor. The Aluzas home on Black Oak Drive was the seat of Christian hospitality. And if truth be told, a bit of an agricultural experiment station. He and Gloria planted and replanted and tended and trimmed and grew, and the yard grew, and the grass got taken out, and other stuff got put in, and things got in. So there was always work in progress. But pomegranates grew, and Ed turned them into precious pomegranate jelly that he gave away at Christmas time. Pine boughs were gathered and combined with pyracantha to form Yule logs. and people gathered for long talks and lemonade under the patio. It was here, in Claremont, that my life first intersected with Ed and Gloria. In 1977, shortly after we arrived in Claremont, Ed invited my wife, Leanne, and me to join a book group, to read a book called The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. It was a book about working through spiritual and other problems, and the book study was to last for 6 weeks. The group was called Crossroads, but a better name would have been Travelers, taking a spiritual journey together. As it turned out, the journey was long. The group continued meeting for 45 years. You may remember some of their names: Wes and Nancy Thune, Mel and Vera Smith, Jay and Jean Master, John and Ruth Bobo, and Dick and Yoka Johnson. Friendships grew. He officiated at the weddings of the children from the Crossroads group: Johnathan, Aluzas, and Milena, Paige Kerchner, and Michael Kaplan, Annette Aluzas and Doug Schmit, Menko and Cammie Johnson. And then he spoke at Leanne Kerchner's memorial service. And just last year, he rejoiced at meeting my new partner, Monica Sharma. They were living, Gloria and Ed were living in a extended stay dormitory when their house was flooded, and we took over Easter dinner, and Ed looked up at Monica and said, "I've given you my blessing," and Monica beamed. The ambulatory survivors of Crossroads met for breakfast just last month. Throughout all of this, Ed invited us into a spiritual world that was deep within ourselves, the root of our being. We did what flowed from that, whether it was teaching children, or selling furniture, or caring for older relatives, marching in protest, campaigning for justice, or serving on the church session. That was it, heart and hands. So a final story. I want to conclude with the naked truth. When he was a pastor here, associate pastor at CPC, he traveled to the utopian community of Findhorn in Scotland and was greatly moved by that experience. And then he went to Esalen on the Pacific coast, and he came home and he preached about his experience right over there. And after starting the sermon, he paused and he looked up with a smile and he said, "You folks look funny with clothes on." And that line drew chuckles then as it just did now. But I could tell you that after having been to Esalen some decades later, it is much easier to get to the truth when we're unencumbered. The author and activist Brian McLaren wrote, "The goal of all spirituality is to lead the naked person to stand trustfully before a naked God." The important thing is that we're all naked. In other words, we've come without title, without merit, without shame, or even demerit. All we can offer to God is who we really are, which to all of us never seems enough. But Ed, the ordinary person who lived an extraordinary life, the man with the 5,000-year-old wisdom would say, no, being you is enough. Being you is what God had in mind when he made you. Thank you all.
And now let us enjoy this special music. My goodness, thank you so much. I'd like to call Annette and Oliver and Kurt forward, and you're going to be speaking now, and you can sit, the two of you who aren't speaking can sit over here next to me.
Thank you, John. That was incredibly beautiful. And my dad would have, I'm sure he's heard that before, and he would have loved it. Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Annette, Ed and Gloria's daughter and the favorite child. As I look around the sanctuary, I see the tapestry of our lives in all these faces. There are people here from all stages of my dad's life, or at least most of them. Friends we knew in Ohio, friends made along the way here in California, co-workers, church friends, neighbors, former clients, family, manor residents, and more. My family and I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate my dad's life. It means the world to us. As you may have noticed, we use the Bible verse from Matthew 25:23 on the front of the bulletin. Well done, good and faithful servant. The phrase comes from Jesus' parable of the talents. This parable highlights the importance of being diligent, faithful, and responsible with the gifts and talents God has given us. It encourages us to use our ability to serve others and to make a positive impact on the world. I think that aptly describes my dad and who he was in this world. My dad had so many talents and qualities: wisdom, athleticism, a huge heart, a belief in justice and inclusion, a dreamer. He had a sense of humor, empathy. He was an encourager. He had playfulness, and he was an amazing listener, a loving father, grandfather, and husband, a lover of nature and animals, and so much more. I'm sure you all have your favorite qualities of him as well. One thing I hear from people the most is how empathetic, kind, and loving my dad was. He loved big. If you were his friend or part of his family, he knew your story. He championed you, was proud of you, and loved being around you. He welcomed so many people into his life as a minister, therapist, and friend. He and my mom also welcomed additional young people into our family. There was Anna from Italy and Geri from England, who were exchange students that each lived with us for a year. Phil and Justin were a couple of Johnathan's friends that became of our family during their high school years. And then when my brothers and I married, Doug, Melina, and Sylvia joined the family and were included in that love. One of my favorite memories is from our wedding. Dad walked me down the aisle, then went behind a partition and changed into his clergy robe. He was dual duty that day. He came out to start the service, but before he started speaking, he started singing. This was a surprise to me, to all of us. It was not something that we had planned. He sang Sunrise, Sunset from Fiddler on the Roof. Is this the little girl I carried? Is this the little boy at play? I don't remember getting older. When did they? He sang a cappella at first in his rich baritone voice, and then the band that we had there for the reception came in quietly to accompany him. It was one of the most beautiful moments of my life to be serenaded by my dad, and such a gift. We were all in tears before the wedding even started. Dad delighted in being around people that he loved. It brought him no greater pleasure than to have breakfast with friends, dinner with Crossroads, and a beer with his son-in-law. He loved being in the middle of a family gathering. He didn't have to be the center of attention. He just wanted to be there with those he loved. He also had a very playful nature. He loved a good joke, or a bad one, and a pithy pun. When we were younger, we would have a great time playing board games like Monopoly and Life, then later graduated to Yahtzee and Farkle. We had an above-ground pool in the backyard that some of you might remember, and we would play Shark, which was basically a game of tag, in which Dad was the shark, and we would try to make it across the pool without getting eaten by the shark. He never tired of playing with us, or if he did, he didn't show it. I know he always loved golfing and bowling with friends and family as well. Play was one of his favorite ways of hanging out with the people that he loved and delighting in life. When Oliver was about 2, I walked into our living room one afternoon in Virginia when Mom and Dad were visiting to find Oliver, Mom, and Dad, who were in their mid-70s, mind you, all laying with their backs on the carpet underneath our coffee table, which was about this high. It had a blanket over it. And they were playing a game that Oliver had made up involving camping. So there were my parents, gamely playing along with their sweet grandson, giggling and talking in their tent. They would also go sledding with him in the winter and swimming at the pool with him in the summer. They were and are amazing playmates and grandparents. In sharing memories about my dad with my brothers, one thing we all remembered fondly was hearing Dad give his sermons on Sunday mornings. Whether we were kids, surly teenagers, or young adults, the sound of his voice and the way he would weave everyday and spiritual stories together to form a message would hold our attention and leave us lighter, perhaps even with a new perspective on something. And we weren't the only ones who felt this way. His sermons, wedding, and funeral homilies often wove biblical references with everyday stories, sometimes involving his family, other theologians, poets, sports writers, movies, and current events. If you're interested in seeing some of his sermons and other writings, we have a book on the memory table in the fellowship hall, and we brought some of those. One of my favorites is an Epiphany sermon in which The Wizard of Oz, one of his favorite movies, played a big part with the question of what home is for each of us. I believe that my dad made God accessible by showing his presence in the everyday world, the people we meet, the music we listen to, the beauty of nature, the stories we hear on the news, and the connections between it all. But Dad took it one step further. He encouraged and challenged us, kind of like the poem at the beginning of the service, to live by example, to really love our neighbors, no matter their ethnicity or sexual orientation, to reach out a hand to those in need, whether it's someone who needs a compassionate listener or someone who needs a meal, to speak up against prejudice and injustice, to be a light in the world that can sometimes be dark, to find joy in our communities. In short, he walked the walk and talked the talk and encouraged us to walk with him. Ed Aluzas loved big, played hard, and brought the love of God to the communities around him. To this we say, well done, good and faithful servant. Rest now. We've got it from here. We will do you proud. And I say, thanks, Dad. I love you.
Hello, and I'm very thankful for everyone who has been here today to celebrate the life of my grandfather. I have decided in honor of him to write a poem, which some of you may be like, why is he writing a poem? And I'd like to read it to you today. Something my grandfather always told me was, I see you. And it simply meant, I see you, I respect you, and I love you. So with that, I'd like to read you this. Under the desert moon, where the nebula and stars bloom, where eyes so bright with tears can carry beyond their years, through the echoing light, I see you. Your cornflower blue eyes remind me of blessed afternoon skies, your smile so joyful and sweet, with love and your family planted at your feet, with pomegranates in your worn palms. I see you. Those valleys in the rains, the canyon even on driest days, and your wrinkled smile, and your rough hands have been through miles, the kindness of your mischievous and caring grin. I see you. You held my words and stories, as if tales of great glory. My emotions, waves, and turbulent identity, you helped me calm to serenity. With mischief in your back pocket, I hold the watch you give me as locket. As looking at each other as we found connection, and simply spoke, whispered as in folk, that wherever we go, and we will find things and remember and grow. And in my last words for today, that we can all can say, in my grandfather's eyes and words that we can all see and hear, like the California poppies glowing after rain, I see you.
Good morning. So I'm Kurt. I am the eldest son of Ed, and we let Annette think she's the favorite one, but really it's me. But we just kind of let her think that. So it's, you see a recurring theme here about how big of a heart my dad had. So it's really no surprise to us here that he had such a big and inclusive heart. And first and foremost, his heart was filled with love for Mom. And given how much he loved and cherished Mom, I know that he would really appreciate all the love and support that you've shown her over these times, these last few weeks and months. So thank you for that. Now, as Chuck and Annette alluded to, Dad's heart was big, and it compelled him to reach out to those around him to offer whatever he could give of himself. And his involvement in our lives and in the lives of all of us out here not only spanned our individual lifetimes, but crossed generations at times, from baptisms to weddings, including my own wedding, to memorials and all the other good stuff, and also the hard stuff in between. He was there for us whenever we needed him. You know, whenever my friends and Johnathan's friends and Annette's friends would come over to our house, they had to run the gauntlet by Dad first. You know, if he was out there, he'd be like, well, how are you doing? You know, and it'd take like 20 minutes. We're like, come on, we got to get out of here, you know? But that's who he was. He cared, you know, he cared for all of us that way. And he was there for us. And he, you know, even as I grieve for him now, his words are with me, you know, thinking about how he would be comforting me, how he'd be comforting all of us. So I appreciate that, and he's still with all of us in that sense. But to me, first and foremost, he was Dad. You know, he was so I want to share a little bit what that's like. You know, he was there during all the pivotal moments of my life to nurture me, to nudge and mentor and be a guide to me. And not only did he read me bedtime stories when I was small, and he made up stories of his own, but in doing so, he infected me with a love for reading, which all of his children have, and also a creativity and imagination to kind of make up our own things. Sports were central in our relationship as father and son. We've heard about what a good athlete he is. He could out-bowl me left-handed. He was not left-handed. I mean, and that's what he would do to try to even the playing field just a little bit, just to show a little bit of sympathy, like, oh my God, this kid, is he even mine? I mean, he gutter-balled it like 20 times now. I better bowl left-handed. So, but, you know, he's the guy that taught me to throw a ball, to play sports, and even coach my first Little League team, which was, you know, precious in itself. But more than that, in passing on a love for sports, he instilled in me the self-discipline that was involved with that, with being successful, not only the knowing how to push myself, but also the value of teamwork, and all that has served me well throughout my life, through whatever, you know, I had to face. Now, in addition to that, sports also gave us some golden moments together, like sitting in the living room quietly on the edge of our seats, listening to Vince Scully call Dodgers baseball games on the radio. And that was just a golden moment together. As you heard, Dad was a family man. He loved his family with all his heart. But here's the thing, and Annette already captured this as well. All of you and those who couldn't be with us here today are part of what he considered family. His heart was big, and his sense of family was so inclusive, that he included, extended family, in-laws, his friends and neighbors, the friends of his children, some of whom came and lived with us for a while, as Annette said, and all the animals we had into his big heart, and he loved and cared for them all and grieved when any of them were lost or hurt. Now, nurturing us also meant giving us freedom to explore life and to roam and to grow and to choose our own paths. And we did just that on the many camping trips, and hiking trips and other explorations we did growing up. Sometimes they would hear about that roaming that we did years later and be horrified that they had given us such free rein. But we came through it unscathed, and I think that also was very formative to us. Now, he also took me and many others, probably other people who are in this room, on what seemed like some kind of crazy pilgrimage to hike all the way to the top of Mount Baldy, which he did probably a dozen times or more in his lifetime. And through all those trips and other adventures from a young age, both he and Mom taught me a love and appreciation and respect for the natural world that I eventually turned into a career, and they supported me fully in that and never once said, when are you going to get a real job? But more than just being there for us, they both nurtured our individual sparks that we had, and our inquisitive spirit, and encouraged us to follow our hearts in whatever we chose to do. Now, Dad was also an important spiritual guide for me. Now, he was not one to tell me what I should believe or where I should end up in my spiritual journey. But he was there to provide signposts, guardrails, and the occasional roadside assistance along the way. And he instilled in me his faith in a merciful, loving, and compassionate God. And more than that, as Annette alluded to as well, both he and Mom led by example in terms of how to live one's values with service to others and to the greater good. Now, Dad had a childlike sense of silliness and a thirst of joy and a playful spirit, as Annette said. He got great joy from being with family and friends, from sports and playing games. Being goofy and silly also brought him joy. One of the things he used to do, and this would bring him to just howling with laughter, is he'd ball up a piece of paper in the living room, and when the cat was there, he would throw the balled up piece of paper across the linoleum in the kitchen. The cat would go flying after it and then go skidding across the linoleum in the kitchen. And he could do that for 15, 20 minutes easily, until we finally had to stop him, So that's who he was. He just loved to laugh and have joy. And being goofy and silly was also part of that. And we're going to actually rope you into some of that right now. And you don't really have a choice to get out of it. So one of the things, both Mom and Dad loved to sing. And we'd go on these long car rides as kids. And your kids are fighting in the back seat. And probably my sister was beating up on both Johnathan and I, never the other way around. One of the ways they used to torture us was, okay, we're going to make you guys do a sing-along. Okay. So that was a way to get us to cooperate there. And so this is one of the songs that we used to sing many, many times, on our family trips together. So, and we do expect full audience participation in this. So, but just have fun with it, let your joy loose, and thank you.
So stand, the words are on your back. Stand if you're able, and the words are on the back. And I don't know if you want to lead it, Kurt, to get everybody on key. And I hope those of you, this is being streamed, those of you at home, join us. You did good. I think you would have liked that. Hear these words from the prophet Micah. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with ten of thousands of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. I can't think of a better scripture that sums up Ed's life, and as you've already heard, it seems to be what was guiding him all his life, doesn't it? It puts all that we're required to do in a nutshell. Do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with determination with your God. I did a little research on the word for justice, the Hebrew word, and one of the translations indicates that it has overtones of judgment as in listening to both sides and choosing truth. Justice means fairness, equality, freedom to act for what is right, for what God calls us to stand up and do. And all of that is exactly what Ed believed and did. From standing up with and in favor of civil rights, to working with those who had many needs, working with the least of these who others had given up on. Martin Luther King Jr. said that the moral arc of the universe eventually swings toward justice. And during Ed's life, I think he saw that arc start to swing towards justice as civil rights won some rights, segregation was outlawed, and eventually even members of the LGBTQ+ community earned some rights. Gloria and her family agree that in this moment in history, he would be appalled. We're watching the moral arc of the universe regress. But I'm sure that Ed's determination to do justice will live on in his family, as you have already indicated. To love kindness is probably my favorite part of the phrase. The word for kindness in Hebrew is often what's translated from chesed. Chesed comes from the Hebrew word for guts. It is compassion that comes out of your deepest part of your body and your whole being. As an associate pastor here, which I was in the late 80s, I sent him troubled people that had asked for counseling help. I knew that my basic counseling training could manage 2 meetings at most. So I'd call Ed. I would also consult with him for advice on the kind of counselor that some people needed. I would get references. He was always so kind and so willing to help. My favorite story is actually about one June. This congregation back then had 700 and some odd members. And it was June, and the other 2 pastors were not here. One was having a baby, and the other one was on vacation, and it was me. And we were having a vacation Bible school, the complicated kind, the Marketplace 29 AD, where we had tribes and a marketplace and a million things that I had to do. And it was June. There were weddings every single weekend, and people started to pass away, to die. I said, there should be a law. Can't do this in the month of June. I literally could not find the time to get to a couple of the families. Ed stepped right up and immediately took over and helped and did some of the funerals, as did another retired pastor. Two others, actually, Ken McCandless and Bob Kelly, helped out during that very overly busy time. I was so grateful to him. He was so gracious about all that he did during that time, and so I'm paying it forward now that I'm retired. I was telling Annette and Gloria that the older I get, the less I know about God. That God is mystery. And they immediately said, well, that is what could be applied to how Ed thought. As he got older, he got more and more spiritual and more aware of the mystery and awesomeness of our God. His faith was not a static thing. It was always growing, pulling him on toward the next step of understanding. Every new insight, every new author pulled him forward, they said. It was for him an ongoing inquiry. I love that. An ongoing inquiry. All along his journey, this quest of his, he walked reverently and humbly with his God. Ed, you have now gone on to that next, and for us mortals, a step into immortality. How appropriate that we're meeting on this resurrection weekend, on Holy Saturday, that between time, between the grave and resurrection. And it gives us so much hope as we go to celebrate Easter tomorrow. Hope for the family and for friends that one day we will be also continuing our inquiry in eternity. And so may you have joy, and may you have peace. May your inquiry ever continue. Well done, good and faithful servant. Amen. I invite Johnathan to come forward.
Oh boy. First of all, Chuck, I want to thank you for burning the image of my father dancing naked at Esalen into my brain forever. I thought it was going to be that picture, but now it's something entirely different. And on the issue of Annette being the favorite child, I will concede that point. But I also want to point out that she is a baby boomer. Kurt and I are Gen X, so she's actually an entire generation older than we are. She had way more time to curry favor with mom and dad. She has been a remarkable sister, and she is the best to everybody around her, so thank you. My dear friend, Susie Ring, where are you, Susie? She said, try to breathe. I'm trying to breathe. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this right now. But this is what we have, and so if I'm going to be doing it, I'm happy to be doing it with all of you. So thank you all for being here. It seems like it would kind of be a heavy lift to summarize your father's life in a handful of minutes, but it's really not. It's pretty easy for me. I can lock it down in less than 5 seconds. And here it is. My father was a better man than I am. He just was. And I don't say that to be self-deprecating. I don't say that out of any sense of disappointment in myself. I just say it because it's true. It's true. I say it with reverence, not regret. And it is objectively true. He dedicated himself to a life of service through the church, through God. I did not. My dad had a PhD. I'm a junior. I think I'm like 5 credits short of being a senior. And I'm liking the looks of class of 2040 right now. In his 20s, my dad went to seminary and got married. In my 20s, I worked in a gym and got drunk. My dad provided spiritual counseling to women in the Chino State Prison. I provided nutrition counseling to women in Encino. Not the same thing. My dad marched on the Capitol for civil rights. I got nothing. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. Maybe that's it. My dad was in D.C. to hear Dr. King deliver his I Have a Dream speech. He was there. I was at Dodger Stadium to see Michael Jackson sing Beat It. Shout out to Chris Forney. Where are you? He was just a better man. He's just a better man than I am. But that's really a gift. It's a gift to have parents who are better than you are, who never tell you how to be, who to be, just encourage you to be who you need to be and to follow the path that you need to follow, even when that path seems to be headed straight for a cliff sometimes. My parents have always been my North Star. That's that bright light on the horizon toward which I can orient my ship during times of darkness. When I was 21, Desert Storm started, and I stopped by 682 Black Hills Drive for some reason and got into a discussion about it with my dad. It started as a discussion, it turned into a debate, and it ended up an argument, and I lost my temper for whatever reason and stormed out of the house feeling like I had won the argument. But to give you a little backstory, my position on it was that men, we war. That's what we do. Men go to war. If you throw a dart at a map, you're going to find men at war. If you point to any time in history you find men at war, it's just intrinsic to who we are as human beings. It's what we do. Dad's position was, yeah, but it doesn't have to be that way. So he believed in the goodness of men. He remained calm. He listened. I ranted and raved. I eventually stormed out feeling like I had won the day, feeling pretty good about myself. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mail. You may remember handwritten letters. They were a thing. Had my dad's distinctive handwriting on the envelope. I opened it up. 2 to 3 double-sided pages of handwritten content. It began something, the letter's long since disappeared, but it began something like, I may not be able to out-debate you, but here's why I believe in the goodness of men. And then over the next 4 to 6 pages, he showed me why, and I realized I didn't win that argument. I didn't win that argument. He just gave it to me. He knew that I needed a win, even a cheap one, because it was a tough time for me in my life, and I needed a win more than he needed it. So it was one of the first times that I just fully grasped that my dad was a better man. He had the quiet strength of somebody who is certain of what is genuinely good and right, and he didn't need to match my volume with his own. He just listened. He let me say my piece. He let me have what I needed to have in that moment, and then when the time was right, a few days later, when my temper had dissipated, he showed me what it looked like to be a better man. We need men like my father, right now, especially. There is a heaviness in the air, a heaviness about around all of us, and it feels like terminal divisiveness being spurred on by small men with big wallets, stirring their cauldron of darkness and dissent, and without any sort of concern for the wreckage that it's causing to all of us. We need men like my father to remind us through the simple example of how he moved through the world that in times that feel like tyranny, perhaps the only available act of rebellion is kindness, is compassion, just listening, because that's not something that they can legislate away. In probably the only time you will ever hear me quote scripture, I will tell you that in the book of Matthew, Jesus is quoted as having said, "But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven." And I don't know about heaven. I don't know if I'm a child of God, but I know that I am my Father's son. I don't need scripture to tell me how to behave. I have had the greatest living examples of grace and goodness in the form of my parents my whole life. We need men like my father right now. His body may be gone, but his light still remains. And there is a spark, I think, inside of all of us who knew him, all of us who came in contact with him. We need that light. My simple ask today would be, don't let that light die. Do something. Do something in his memory. Some mitzvah, some simple act of service. It doesn't have to be grand, just something small, a kindness, compassion. Give voice to somebody who feels like they have no voice. Stand up for something that matters. Reach across the table to someone you disagree with and listen. Just do something. You know, my dad's favorite poem was Gunga Din. It was his favorite movie, actually, and it was based on the poem by Rudyard Kipling. You can Google it. But basically, it's a story of an Indian man who wanted to be a British soldier, but he was denied the opportunity because of racism and classism. And so he served in the only way that he was allowed to serve. He was a water boy for the British soldiers, and in doing so, he showed himself to be the bravest and the most honorable man in the bunch. He was a man of service. As a kid, I would bug him to recite the poem. I actually think he made up the lyrics, but I, at one point, ended up kind of learning it myself because I thought it'd be fun at one point to actually show him what the real lyrics were. But I would bug him to say it, and he would. And you may have heard it at one point. You may talk of gin and beer when you're quartered safe out here, and you're sent to penny fights in Aldershot. But when it comes to slaughter, you will do your work on water, and you'll lick the bloomin' boots of him that's got it. Now, in India's sunny clime, I used to spend my time a servant of Her Majesty the Queen. Of all them black-faced crew, the finest man I knew was a regimental beastie, Gunga Din. And he would, of course, do it with great fanfare and theatricality and some ridiculous, overwrought, quasi-English accent of questionable origin. But it was magnificent, it was fantastic, and we loved it. And of course my dad loved Gunga Din. It was a story of discrimination, of cruelty. It was an underdog story. Ultimately, it was a tale of service, of serving however you can, in whatever way you can. It was a summary of the things that he fought against and fought for his whole life. And in loving this movie and in loving this poem, I think that he unknowingly and unintentionally chose his own epitaph. The last verse of Gunga Din goes, this is going to be an adventure. So I'll meet him later on at the place where he is gone, where it's always double drill and no canteen. He'll be squatting by the coals, serving drinks to poor damned souls. And I'll get a drink in hell from Gunga Din. Yes, Dean, 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 you Lazarusian leather Gunga Din, though I belted you and flayed you by the living God that made you. You're a better man than I am, Gunga Din. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you. Some instructions. I will lead the family out all the way to the fellowship hall. Please do not stop them on the way. And then you're welcome to follow. The guest book is there. We have a beautiful table of memories. And we have food. We have an actual lunch. And we hope that you will stay and eat. And in fact, if the receiving line, which will be in the fellowship hall, not elsewhere, if it's too long, feel free to go in another door and get some food first and then come back. We just hope we'll save you some. The dessert table, yes. So Ed loved desserts, correct? And so lots of delicious desserts. All his favorites were made by the family and friends. And so you are especially invited to the dessert table. We are grateful that you were all here. This service has been streamed. Thank you to those watching, but you can watch it or share it with others as well. We have both a YouTube page and a Facebook page and the website. So Claremont Presbyterian Church. My friends, as we go out, know that we carry that light that Ed had in us. We carry with us his spirit and his memories. Go, share, cry together, laugh together, and be at peace. May the grace of the God of love and peace be with you all. Amen.